Alright, so this is a dream I had last night. I call this the conscious news dream. Now I'm going to get right into it. And I also just want to mention how it's interesting how I could have had like 85 different dreams last night. And this is the one that stuck out to me the most. I'm going to try to keep this short, but I think there are definitely a couple lessons that I can learn and maybe help somebody else learn from this. So I call this a conscious news dream. There were a couple of characters in my dream. There was Russell Brand. There was Kyle from Secular Talk. There was Krystal and Saagar from Breaking Points, and I think there was one other character that I can't really remember, but the dream goes like this. We were kind of all just in a room. I think it was like a hotel room or something, and just like talking. We were talking. It seemed like we were talking for a while, and the first thing I want to note is that I've said this before, I've mentioned this before, that you can not know people in like this real life, but then for some reason in the dream world, you seem to know them pretty well, and you seem to have a pretty free-flowing conversation. So I think there were 4 or 5 or maybe 6 of us in the room, but it seemed like I was talking to Kyle and Krystal the most, which is interesting. Wasn't really talking to Russell Brand, wasn't really talking to Saagar, but I think the conversation must have been about the news and the conscious news. And when I woke up from this dream, instantly the first thing that came to my mind was that conscious news is the future of news, conscious business is the future of business. I think the first thing that conscious business is the future of business is the reason why consciousness is going to take over the news, and that you can already see it by, I think probably one of the most popular independent news sources right now is Russell Brand. Russell Brand, out of these 3 sources that I used to watch a lot, Russell Brand, Secular Talk, and Breaking Points, Russell Brand is kind of the highest stage yellow and the most, at least seems to be the most conscious person out of it, in that I would say that I resonate with the most. Then I would say second is Kyle with Secular Talk. He's more stage green, but a little stage yellow and a little higher consciousness, but I don't agree with him on everything. But it seemed like we had a weirdly close connection, that we were talking about just like the future of news and the consciousness. And then below that is Breaking Points, Krystal and Saagar. They're still pretty high up there compared to like, regular news outlets. But I think the thing that really got to me was that everybody in that is pretty young. I mean, I'm not sure how old Russell Brand is. Maybe Russell Brand isn't that young, but people in the future, when they're consuming news, they don't want all this fear-based, hate-based division, kind of just propaganda. Now, I'm not saying that all news is propaganda. Take everything with a grain of salt. But in the past, it has all been trending towards this situation where news has been highly unconscious. News has been highly unconscious, and that's been informing the reality that we live in, which is highly unconscious. And as we start to go through this mass awakening, this consciousness revolution, more people start to become more conscious, and more people start to want more out of their news. Now, some people might think that meditation, we shouldn't talk about meditation in the news. That's not news. Well, it's news to a lot of people who have never heard of meditation. I think that there's this conception that news can only be about the things that are going out in the external world that we can all see and all hear. I think that is completely untrue. Why is that completely untrue? Well, first of all, a lot of the things that we hear on the news, again, are just blatantly propaganda. They're blatantly opinions. There's nothing objective about you sharing your opinion. People will share their opinions about all these issues. They call them opinion pieces. That's how Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity and Rachel Maddow and all these people are making millions and millions and millions of dollars. They're not sharing the news. They're talking about current events. Sure, they're talking about things that are happening, putting their own spin on it, putting their own taste, putting their own propaganda onto it. The same way that I'm sharing my dream that happened last night, and I'm sharing my opinion, I'm sharing my interpretation, I'm sharing my spin on it. How is my dream? This is going to be a very interesting analogy. Maybe this will make sense, maybe it won't. How is my dream that I see in my mind any more or less real, that I'm interpreting, any more or less real than some current event that Tucker Carlson is talking about? Just because we can all see it, why can't we all see my dream? Why can't we all see your dream? It's because we don't share them. We don't talk about them. Maybe that made absolutely no sense. Maybe that made a lot of sense. But why is something that when people are meditating, like the Dalai Lama or monks, why is that stuff not on the news? Maybe it's because the news has a bias or a skew towards lower consciousness stuff. And maybe they're saying, well, we're just trying to feed our audience base. That's what our audience wants. But when something is as powerful as the media or the news, they are basically tastemakers. they pretty much, whether they know it or not, and I'm sure they know it, they massively affect the consciousness of their viewers. So somebody like Russell Brand understands this, realizes that he would rather uplift people through the news. Doesn't mean that the news is all happy, but you can at least put a little positive spin on anything. We can learn lessons, and he takes more of a stage yellow approach. A stage yellow approach, spiral dynamics, looking from a broader view, looking from a systemic approach, not blaming individual people, and not really sharing his opinions as much. What I really enjoy specifically about Russell Brand and his style of news, his style of higher consciousness news, is that it's not really opinion based. He's sharing from, again, a stage yellow, systemic approach, looking from a broader view, giving you all the information, and being like, yeah, I trust you enough that you're a smart person that you can make up your mind. The way that most of the media works, that kind of vibrates at that stage yellow, or is at that level of spiral dynamic stage orange, where it's all about business, it's all about money, it's all about keeping you addicted to it, is that it's all about fear. It's all about, you gotta watch what's happening next because the world might end. That's literally every single thing. And I know there are some things in the world, especially happening right now, that are very scary that, will keep people addicted to the news. But they always want to tell you that this is the worst thing, this is the worst thing, this is the worst thing, that's the group you should blame, those are the people that you should hate. They're telling you what to think, they're telling you what to do. That's a low consciousness version of news. And just in the same as education. Low consciousness version of education is indoctrination. It's telling you what to think. You wouldn't want to go to a school and they just say, this is what you should think. That's who you should be friends with. This is who you should hate. That's who you should like. No. A high consciousness version of education would help you to explore, would help you to introspect, would help you to search within, and then find your authentic true self and express it to others so everybody can come together as one in unity. And the same could be possible with news. I call this the conscious news. Maybe this will happen, maybe this won't, but just like every single business is trending in this direction to become more conscious. Finance is trending in this direction to become more conscious. How is that happening? With the introduction of cryptocurrencies, with the introduction of centralization, when things lose their centralization, when things become decentralized, it seems that they start to become more conscious. Independent media is decentralized. You have people like Russell Brand, who he could not work at a major news network. Russell Brand could not be an anchor at a Fox, an ABC, an NBC, a CBS. Russell Brand, an MSNBC, or any of these. Russell Brand could not do it there. But he has his own YouTube channel where he has 5 million subscribers and is probably getting tens or 20s of millions of views every single day. I don't know. It might be lowballing that. He's getting so many views. He probably might even be getting more views than a lot of these primetime anchors, which is crazy to think about, but it also shows that people are not trusting the news at an all-time high. People are more skeptical of the news than they've ever been before. There are more options than ever, but people are also raising their awareness, raising their consciousness, and they would like to hear the news from a person who is also trying to raise their consciousness, to raise their awareness. I think the news, especially most of these mainstream news, would look so much different if you knew that the anchors were, first of all, transparent. One of the things I really like about the independent media, about Krystal and Saagar and Kyle and Russell Brand, is that they'll tell you when they've made a mistake. They'll be like, yes, here's a time when I was wrong. That is an actual person with humility and authenticity. I have never heard that from like a mainstream anchor or a mainstream source. They'll always blame it, oh, our source was wrong. Oh, well, we weren't really wrong because of this and this and that. That ego, that hubris, that stubbornness is kind of going to be leading to their demise, or it's already leading to their demise, because as the kind of traditional media starts to crumble, the unconscious media starts to crumble, the new, independent, more conscious media starts to rise from the ashes. And I think that this is an important lesson. Maybe this is why this was in my dreams, is that this is going to happen to pretty much every single industry. Every single industry, as society and as the masses start to raise their consciousness, as everybody starts to become more awake, more aware, raise their vibration, so will businesses. And if businesses remain unconscious, those businesses will go extinct. Those businesses will get lost in the sauce. That's probably not the right expression. I don't know. Having fun with it this morning. The businesses that don't evolve, the businesses that the CEOs and the leaders don't evolve, as well as the employees, as well as the systems, as well as their values, if they don't evolve and become more conscious, they are gonna not exist in the future. So, this is a great lesson for the news. If anybody's in the news, they're probably not watching this, but you've got to become more conscious. How do you become more conscious in the news? First of all, be impeccable with your word. That's from the 4 agreements. How many news stations do you know are impeccable with their word? Oh my gosh. I would say even out of the independent ones, really of the ones that I've watched, it's pretty much just Russell Brand, which is crazy to think about and how hard that is. Maybe it's not possible for an operation at such a mass scale, but it also makes you think about, do you really need mass media? Ooh, they would argue that yes, you do, because they're the gatekeepers, they're the foundation of truth, that independent media can't be fact-checked because they don't have hundreds of people working and looking up. Oh gosh, fact-checking is a whole nother rant. Gosh, I don't even know if I'd be allowed to make a rant like that, but I'm going to wrap this one up. It's getting a little long. The conscious news, that's my dream. That's a little rant on it. Their news is going to be raising its vibration.